Andy Byron reportedly breaks down after his wife divorces him over Coldplay concert affair. In this episode, we dive into the explosive fallout from the viral Coldplay concert scandal involving astronomer CEO Andy Byron, who was caught on the Jumbotron with his company's HR chief, Kristen Cabot, not his wife. The internet quickly connected the dots, uncovering a shocking workplace affair that blindsided Andy's wife, Megan Kerrigan Byron, and rocked social media. Now, she's officially filed for divorce, and Andy is reportedly breaking down behind the scenes, placed on indefinite leave from his company as the scandal continues to spiral. What if I told you that everything Andy Byron had spent 20 years building, his marriage, his family, his billion-dollar tech empire, was undone in just 16 seconds? It happened at a Coldplay concert. Under the soft neon lights of Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, as "Fix You" echoed across the crowd, a Jumbotron cut to a couple wrapped in quiet conversation. The camera zoomed. They weren't looking. The crowd laughed. And then, like something out of a rom-com, they kissed. Only this wasn't some anonymous pair having a spontaneous, harmless moment of concert euphoria. This was Andy Byron, the CEO of Astronomer, one of the fastest-growing software companies in the world. And the woman beside him? Kristen Cabot, Chief Human Resources Officer at the very same company. Beautiful. Poised. Smiling, but not his wife. Andy Byron was a man the industry hailed as the next Elon, a Silicon Valley saint, a man who talked about empathy on stage and loyalty off it. A man who, until that moment, was believed to be in a rock-solid marriage with Megan Kerrigan Byron, his college sweetheart, co-founder of a tech ethics nonprofit, and mother to his 2 children. The moment the kiss happened, the stadium cheered. Online, it exploded because someone recorded it. And someone else recognized him. Then another person posted Megan's photo. Within hours, the entire internet had put the pieces together, and Andy Byron was trending on every platform for all the wrong reasons. The seemingly harmless moment turned into one of the most catastrophic public meltdowns in tech history, and the damage? It went far beyond memes and media headlines. This wasn't just a PR crisis. It was personal, because as millions watched and judged and joked, Megan was silent. She hadn't been at the concert. She hadn't been warned. And by the time she saw the video, she was already being tagged on Instagram by strangers. Her husband, on kiss cam. With another woman. At a Coldplay concert they were supposed to attend together. That's how it started. But this is not a story about a kiss. This is a story about betrayal. About collapse. About how power and charisma can be intoxicating and destructive. It's about how a seemingly perfect man in a tailored suit, with TED Talks and Wall Street endorsements, can quietly fall apart from the inside. It's about the wife who found out with the rest of the world, and chose dignity over denial. And most of all, it's about what happens when your personal sins catch up with your professional image. Because in the days that followed that concert, Andy Byron wasn't just trending. He was unraveling. Within 48 hours, Astronomer's board had launched an internal ethics review. Kristen was quietly removed from her role. Andy was placed on indefinite leave. His personal Instagram disappeared. Astronomer's share value dropped 13%. Investors went silent. And inside his $9.8 million Palo Alto home, sources say Andy was barely functioning. Meanwhile, Megan Kerrigan Byron, once the quiet force behind her husband's success, became the face of quiet rage. She issued a single statement. No interviews. No dramatic tears. Just, I loved my husband. I trusted him. But what I saw that night wasn't a mistake, it was clarity. And I'm moving forward. She filed for divorce the next morning. So what really happened that night? Why was Andy Byron at the concert with Kristen Cabot? Why wasn't Megan there? Why did an entire billion-dollar company go silent for 3 days? And more importantly, why did this one moment, just 16 seconds, expose something so much bigger? To understand the fallout, you have to understand the foundation. Andy Byron wasn't just another CEO. He was tech royalty. A man who gave keynote speeches about integrity. A man who cried on stage while accepting a Most Ethical Leader award in 2022. A man who built a company that boasted zero layoffs during COVID, that pledged equity and mental health support for employees, that offered tuition reimbursement to single mothers in tech. People trusted Andy Byron, and they loved Megan. To many in Silicon Valley, the Byrons were the Obamas of enterprise software, charming, graceful, aspirational. They weren't flashy. They didn't flaunt their wealth. Their kids went to regular school. Megan still drove a hybrid. Their Christmas cards went viral every year for their authenticity and warmth. So when the scandal broke, when the video surfaced, people didn't just feel betrayed, they felt complicit because they had believed in him. They had invested in him, not just financially, but emotionally. Kristen Cabot, on the other hand, wasn't as well known publicly. But inside Astronomer, she was a rising star. A sharp strategist. Fiercely intelligent. She helped restructure the company's hiring pipeline to focus on women and BIPOC candidates. She was frequently featured on DEI panels, quoted in Fast Company, even rumored to be a future COO. But those closest to the executive circle now say, the warning signs were there: subtle shifts, unexplained late meetings, trips that didn't match calendars. A holiday party moment that felt off. None of it mattered, until it was caught on camera, until it was indisputable, and that's what changed everything. It wasn't speculation. It was proof. It wasn't behind closed doors. It was on a stadium screen. In front of 60,000 people. And the entire internet. This exposé will take you through every angle: how Megan reacted in private, how Astronomer imploded from within, how Andy Byron, once a king of tech, fell into emotional collapse, how Kristen Cabot tried to control the narrative, and failed, and how a Coldplay concert became ground zero for a modern-day corporate tragedy, because behind the headlines and hashtags are real people. Real heartbreak. Real consequences. Andy Byron thought he could control the message, but the internet writes its own stories now, and in this story, he's no longer the hero. This is the unraveling of Andy Byron, and it all started with a kiss. Before the scandal, before the Coldplay kiss cam, before his name became synonymous with betrayal, Andy Byron was Silicon Valley's golden boy. You couldn't walk through the lobby of a major tech conference without seeing his face on a billboard. He was the man who made big data beautiful, as one magazine profile put it, the founder and CEO of Astronomer, a company that didn't just create software, but changed the way Fortune 500s interpreted information, visualized it, and scaled it across teams. Andy wasn't just a tech innovator. He was a storyteller, and it worked. In less than a decade, Astronomer had gone from a small startup working out of a WeWork in Mountain View to a unicorn valued at $6.30 billion. Investors described him as charming but analytical. Journalists called him one part Tony Stark, one part Obama. His employees said he was the kind of boss who remembered your kid's name. So how did this man, who seemed to have it all, spiral so fast? To understand that, you have to rewind. Way back. Before Astronomer. Before the marriage. Before the millions. Andy Byron was born in Denver, Colorado, to a middle-class family. His father was a mechanical engineer. His mother taught high school biology. He grew up with a love of puzzles and a crippling fear of failure. In high school, he built an algorithm to predict weather changes more accurately than the school's science lab equipment. He got into Stanford, majored in symbolic systems, and wrote his senior thesis on cognitive load theory and machine learning applications. In short, he was brilliant. But Andy wasn't just another coder in a hoodie. He was charismatic. He was the kind of guy who could walk into a pitch meeting with no slides and still walk out with a check. It's part of what made him so dangerous. After graduation, he co-founded a data visualization firm that eventually merged with a supply chain analytics startup. That merger became Astronomer. By 2021, Andy was a regular on Bloomberg, CNBC, and Wired. He talked about AI ethics, climate tech, and leadership burnout. His TED Talk titled The Empathy Engine racked up over 12 million views. He wasn't just running a company, he was shaping culture. And alongside him, always, was Megan. Megan Kerrigan Byron was his quiet counterpart, a Columbia Law graduate turned nonprofit strategist. She met Andy at a tech ethics symposium in San Francisco in 2010. He was speaking. She challenged him during the Q&A. He asked her out that night. They married in 2012. No big wedding. Just close friends, family, and a small ceremony at Muir Woods. Their relationship, by all accounts, was intensely private but visibly strong. They never flaunted each other, but you could tell they were a team. Over the years, Meghan would go on to co-found Root Logic, an ethics watchdog nonprofit focused on the human impact of machine learning. She wrote think pieces for The Atlantic and The Guardian. She advocated for mental health resources in tech, and whenever Andy received an award or appeared on a major podcast, he'd always say the same thing: "I wouldn't be here without Meghan. She's my moral compass." Together, they were seen as a beacon of what modern leadership could look like: powerful, principled, and progressive. Andy didn't party. He didn't have a messy past. There were no old tweets to scrub, no NDAs to bury. He wasn't the type of tech bro that scandals usually followed, and maybe that's why his fall felt so brutal, because it didn't make sense. This wasn't a man who bragged about being single. This was a man who spoke about vulnerability on stage, who cried at his product launches, who told Business Insider that every major decision he made, he ran past Meghan first. So when the video emerged, when people saw him on screen, lips locked with a woman who wasn't his wife, it didn't align. People froze the footage, analyzed it, zoomed in on the expressions. Andy wasn't drunk. He wasn't caught off guard. He leaned in. Willingly. Warmly, and that, perhaps, was the most damning part, because it meant it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. So who was the real Andy Byron? Was he the brilliant, empathetic leader the tech world had fallen in love with, or was he just another man in power who thought the rules didn't apply to him? Those closest to him now say, maybe he was both. One former colleague described Andy as two people in one body. There's Andy the CEO, incredibly sharp, generous, visionary. And then there's Andy the man, someone who struggles with validation, with control, with needing to be the smartest person in every room. That side of him? I think it always scared Meghan. There were whispers, even before the scandal, not of affairs, but of blurred lines, late nights at the office, trips where only Kristen was included. In jokes between them that others found uncomfortable, power dynamics that raised eyebrows but never enough to spark a formal complaint, because no one wanted to believe it. Andy had built too much trust. He was the CEO who offered 12-week paid bereavement leave. The leader who sent handwritten notes to interns. The man who refused a $25 million bonus and donated it to public school tech programs instead. So when the truth came out, when the kiss cam revealed the lie, it wasn't just a personal scandal. It was an identity crisis, not just for Andy, but for every investor, employee, journalist, and fan who had believed in him. One reporter wrote, Andy Byron wasn't supposed to be this kind of man. And that's exactly why his fall feels so devastating. But the truth is, he is the kind of man who, despite being married to a woman who helped build his company, shared his home, raised his children, still chose, in front of thousands, to kiss someone else. He is the kind of man who, even with all the tools, all the awareness, all the privilege to know better, didn't. And now, his legacy hangs in the balance. Because no one remembers your quarterly earnings during a scandal, they remember your silence, your decisions, your face on the Jumbotron. Andy Byron may have been a visionary, but now? He's a cautionary tale. She wasn't supposed to be in the spotlight. In the initial frames of the now infamous Coldplay kiss cam video, most viewers didn't even recognize her. They were too focused on Andy Byron, his face familiar, polished, almost iconic in the tech world. But the woman beside him? The one who laughed, leaned in, and kissed him without a hint of hesitation. Her name is Kristen Cabot, and if Andy Byron was the face of Astronomer, Kristen Cabot was its voice. She had quietly, but forcefully, shaped the company's internal culture over the last 6 years. As Chief Human Resources Officer, Kristen was the architect of Astronomer's much-lauded progressive policies, its 4-day workweeks, its equity hiring initiative, its parental leave reforms, its zero-tolerance stance on workplace harassment. In many ways, she was the soul behind the scenes. But who is she, really? Where did she come from? How did she rise so quickly? And more importantly, how did she become the woman at the center of the most unexpected corporate scandal of the year? To answer that, we need to go back. Kristen Cabot was born and raised in Evanston, Illinois, just north of Chicago. The daughter of 2 university professors, her father taught behavioral psychology, her mother focused on gender studies. Kristen grew up in a household where conversation was everything. She was articulate by 10, leading debate team by 14, and interning with a city council candidate by 17. She wasn't just intelligent. She was precise, controlled. Strategic. At Stanford, where she studied organizational behavior, Kristen earned a reputation as someone who could disarm a room without raising her voice. She interned with Google's People Ops department, later completed her MBA at Wharton, and was headhunted by Astronomer just 3 years later to rebuild their rapidly scaling HR systems. At 32, she became the youngest C-level executive in the company's history. She was meticulous. She was respected. She was effective. Kristen was never flashy, no viral tweets, no Instagram thirst traps, no red carpet appearances. But those who knew her professionally described her as lethal in a good way. She had a near photographic memory. She remembered birthdays, allergies, the names of your kids. She could cite DEI statistics mid-conversation and make you feel seen while doing it. And inside Astronomer's headquarters in Palo Alto, she had real power, not just as an executive, but as Andy Byron's confidant. That part, until recently, was seen as a strength. Kristen and Andy's working relationship had become legendary inside Astronomer. They finished each other's sentences in board meetings. She was often seen just outside the camera's frame during product launches, feeding Andy notes or subtly signaling timing. She was the only executive who could challenge him without consequence. It wasn't just professional chemistry. It was trust. Or at least, that's what people thought. She had his ear, said one former marketing director. And when Kristen wanted something, she got it. Andy would listen to her even when he ignored the rest of us. Some called it mutual respect, others saw the signs long before the video. There were the late-night strategy calls that didn't include other execs, the side glances during offsites, the now-haunting moment at a holiday gala when Kristen arrived in a green silk gown, and Andy couldn't stop staring, but no one said anything. Why would they? There was no evidence. No complaints, and Kristen was HR, she was the system, and perhaps that's what makes her role in this scandal so controversial. Because it isn't just about infidelity. It's about ethics. About boundaries. About how a woman responsible for enforcing workplace policy found herself breaking the very code she helped write. When the video surfaced, Kristen's name wasn't immediately attached to it. But the internet did what it always does. It connected the dots, the hairstyle, the earrings, the tattoo half visible on her collarbone. Within hours, Reddit had confirmed her identity. Within days, she was trending beside Andy on Twitter, and by the end of the week, her LinkedIn profile had been flooded with a mix of praise, condemnation, and disbelief. Kristen was a victim of a double standard, vilified more harshly than Andy simply because she was a woman. Others. She was a hypocrite, a champion of workplace integrity who had crossed a dangerous line. So what's the truth? Who was Kristen to Andy? Sources close to both say the relationship had evolved quietly over time. It wasn't some drunken office affair. It wasn't impulsive. It was slow, subtle, and possibly deliberate. One executive assistant, who worked under Kristen for nearly 3 years, shared anonymously that they had a rhythm that felt intimate. Kristen once told me that Andy understood her better than anyone. At the time, I thought she meant professionally. Now I'm not so sure. After the video went viral, Kristen went silent. No tweets. No public statement. Her Instagram account, once dormant, was deactivated. Astronomer removed her bio from their website, and then, almost a week later, she broke her silence. In a carefully worded statement released to select media outlets, Kristen wrote, "The events of last weekend have caused immense pain to many, including people I care deeply about. I take full accountability for my part in this situation. It was not planned. It was not rehearsed. It was a moment of vulnerability that I deeply regret. I never intended to hurt anyone, least of all Megan." The response was complicated. Some readers sympathized, others scoffed, and many wondered, if it wasn't planned, why were they seated together? Why had they been whispering before the kiss? Why had neither of them pulled away? Critics weren't satisfied. They pointed out that Kristen had spearheaded Astronomer's ethical engagement policy, which explicitly prohibited relationships between C-level executives that could compromise the integrity of leadership decisions or introduce perceptions of favoritism. She had helped write those words, and now, she had broken them. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Kristen wasn't the only one responsible. She didn't act alone, she didn't kiss herself on camera, and yet, in the days following the video, it was her appearance that was dissected most viciously, her body language, her dress, her smile. Why? Because society still punishes women more harshly for perceived seduction, especially in the workplace, because people are quicker to label a woman manipulative than to acknowledge a man's willing participation. Because Kristen, in some ways, embodied the threat people love to hate, a powerful, beautiful woman in control. But that doesn't make her innocent. She knew Andy was married. She worked closely with Megan on multiple company-wide wellness initiatives. She sat beside her at galas, she shook her hand at family picnics. And still, she leaned in, she kissed him, she smiled when the crowd cheered. That moment, caught forever in pixels and pixels and pixels, cannot be undone. And now, Kristen Cabot has become something she never expected, a public figure. Not for her innovation. Not for her reforms, but for a single decision in a stadium full of people. So where is she now? Rumors suggest she's staying with family in Maine, friends say she's devastated, others say she's angry. One former peer told reporters, Kristen feels abandoned by astronomer. Like they used her, then tossed her aside. But the truth is more complicated, because when you rise on values, and fall on violation, the landing is never soft. This isn't just about HR policy, it's about power. Proximity. Seduction. Perception. It's about how a woman can be both brilliant and reckless, compassionate and complicit, trusted and transgressive. Kristen Cabot may never work in corporate HR again, but her name will be studied, in textbooks, in case law, in boardrooms, as a lesson in what happens when the personal collides with the professional, in the public eye. And in this story, she's not just the woman beside Andy Byron. She's the storm behind him. It started as a cheer. 60,000 fans packed into Levi's Stadium, bathing under the glow of 1,000 stage lights as Coldplay transitioned into their encore. The band had just finished Yellow. People were dancing, holding hands, weeping. Phones lit up the crowd like fireflies. The air was electric. Then, the Jumbotron flickered. 2 people appeared on the screen. A man in a navy blazer and a woman with perfectly styled hair. They looked cozy. Familiar. Maybe even flirty. And then it happened, the kiss. It lasted less than 3 seconds. A laugh. A touch of the shoulder. A press of the lips. The crowd screamed. Cheered. Someone whistled. A stranger behind them yelled, "Get it, girl." But one person didn't cheer. In fact, she didn't even flinch. She simply held up her phone, hit record, and uploaded it to TikTok with a caption that read, "When the kiss cam catches your CEO with not his Wi-Fi's #Coldplay Silicon Valley tea." At first, it was just a joke. A funny, if awkward, video. But within 2 hours, it had racked up over 300,000 views. By dawn, it had crossed 3 million. By midday, it had reached every corner of the internet. And the consequences had already begun, because the man in that video wasn't just a CEO. He was Andy Byron, founder of Astronomer, tech industry darling. TED Talk sensation, husband, and the woman, she wasn't his wife, Megan. She was his head of HR, Kristen Cabot. The combination was toxic, explosive, unforgettable. Reddit was the first to piece it all together. Within minutes of the video hitting TikTok's trending page, a Reddit thread titled, "Is this Andy Byron?" started gaining traction. At first, people dismissed it. "No way, that's him. He's too smart for that. It's probably a lookalike." But then someone posted a side-by-side image. Same dimples. Same watch. Same woman who'd appeared on Astronomer's Glassdoor photos 3 weeks earlier. Within 30 minutes, the verdict was in. That was Andy Byron, and the internet had questions. Where's Megan? Is this real? Does Astronomer know? Screenshots flooded Twitter. Digital sleuths dug into Kristen's past posts. A LinkedIn post congratulating her on her anniversary at Astronomer was pulled and dissected. Old photos of Andy and Megan at galas were reposted under new captions. This didn't age well. Journalists jumped in by the second hour. BuzzFeed posted a headline, "Did this billionaire CEO just get caught on kiss cam with his HR chief?" Within the hour, Business Insider followed with, Coldplay kiss sparks questions inside $6 billion tech firm Astronomer, then TechCrunch. Astronomer faces crisis after viral video suggests affair between CEO and executive. The timeline of destruction moved faster than anyone could control, faster than Andy, faster than Astronomer's PR team. At 11:04 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Megan Kerrigan Byron unfollowed Andy on Instagram. At 11:07. She deleted a birthday post of him from last year. By 11:30, reporters were calling her direct line, but Megan didn't respond, not yet. Instead, she texted one friend. That friend leaked it to the press. I saw the video. No, I wasn't at the concert. No, I didn't know. Please respect my privacy. And with that, the fuse hit the dynamite, because this was no longer about a mistake, this was about betrayal. A betrayal witnessed by millions, in public, in high definition, and in complete contradiction to the image Andy had spent years cultivating. Twitter's trending page lit up like a Christmas tree. Hashtag KissCam CEO, hashtag Astronomer Scandal, hashtag Poor Megan, hashtag Coldplay caught it. All the memes were immediate. Point one showed Andy's face superimposed over the Titanic as it sank, another showed Megan photoshopped into a Game of Thrones throne, Queen of Tech now. One tweet went particularly viral. Imagine building $1 billion company and losing it all because you wanted to be Chris Martin for 5 minutes. In less than 12 hours, Astronomer's stock dropped 9%. Investors went silent. Employees began texting one another frantically. Is this real? Have you heard from Kristen? What's Andy going to say? But Andy wasn't saying anything, neither was Kristen, and inside Astronomer, panic was brewing. At 2:13 p.m., an internal memo was sent out by the communications director. It read, in part, "We are aware of circulating social media content involving senior leadership. We ask that all employees refrain from public comment at this time." It was too late. The story had legs. It had faces. It had emotion. It had betrayal. It had a villain, a victim, and a setting so absurd, a Coldplay concert, that no scriptwriter could have invented it better. Mainstream media ran with it by nightfall. CNN did a segment titled, "When the Personal Becomes Public, CEO Caught in Viral Video." MSNBC covered the leadership angle. Fox News spun it into a story about corporate hypocrisy. The View had a full table discussion, and the comments section? Brutal. People posted about loyalty, infidelity, power dynamics, what it means to publicly humiliate your spouse, and whether forgiveness was even on the table. Others dissected Kristen's role. Was she a homewrecker? Was she the pawn? Was this an imbalance of power or a mutual deception? But the center of gravity kept pulling back to one point. Andy Byron kissed someone who wasn't his wife in a stadium full of people, and now the entire world knew. Megan stayed silent. Astronomer issued no press release. Andy was still in hiding. But that night, just 24 hours after the first upload, Megan quietly changed her bio on Instagram. It used to say, wife, mother, believer in good men. Now it said, rebuilding. Don't text me Coldplay lyrics. The internet lost it. She had said nothing, and said everything. That was the tipping point, because now the story wasn't just about infidelity. It was about how Megan was handling it better than Andy ever had, with grace, with silence, with power. And the more the public rallied around her, the more isolated Andy became. In the second 24 hours, more fallout came. Kristen's email account at Astronomer was suspended. Andy's public speaking events were cancelled. The keynote he was supposed to deliver at the Global Innovation Forum? Scrubbed. His headshot removed from promotional materials. The company's internal Slack was on fire. Meanwhile, the original TikTok video had hit 42 million views. The woman who filmed it was offered 5 figures by tabloids for the full resolution file. Her response, "Nah. I already changed the world with one post. That's enough." And she wasn't wrong, because in less than 48 hours, one video had done what years of criticism, regulation, or board pressure couldn't. It cracked the glass around a carefully manufactured image. It turned a private decision into public fallout, and it revealed that even the most admired men in Silicon Valley are still human, flawed, and sometimes foolish. The internet didn't ruin Andy Byron. He did that himself. It just hit upload. She was at home when it happened. The kids were upstairs, finishing a Coldplay playlist on Spotify and debating who had the better voice, Chris Martin or the AI-generated cover versions. Megan Kerrigan Byron was downstairs on the living room sofa, scrolling through emails, trying to prepare for a nonprofit advisory board meeting scheduled for the next morning. Then her phone buzzed. At first, she ignored it, but then it buzzed again and again and again. She picked it up, expecting something mundane, a Slack notification, a reminder to take the dog to the vet. Instead, her iMessage was flooded. Group chats, missed calls, mentions on Instagram from accounts she didn't follow. A friend from law school had simply sent a link. No words. Just a TikTok video. She clicked it. 16 seconds. A stadium. A jumbotron. Andy. Kristen. A kiss. Cheers. Then silence. Megan stared at the screen, her hand frozen, her breath gone. She replayed it again and again. She didn't cry. Not immediately. The first thing she did was whisper her children's names, make sure they were still upstairs, still laughing, still safe in a world that hadn't yet been split open. Then she stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and whispered, "Oh my God." That was the moment she realized the life she had so carefully curated, wife, mother, advisor, public figure, had just been torn apart. Not by chance. Not by illness or accident, but by choice. Andy's choice. Kristen's choice, and worst of all, by their public display of it, because the kiss wasn't just a betrayal. It was a humiliation broadcast to tens of thousands.